Hi everybody, Adam has asked me to record some answers for you so you can get to know a little bit about me and my course better. So here we go. What first inspired you to pursue animation? Well, it was purely by luck. I was at art school studying graphic design, typography and illustration, and thought I would walk into a job because I'd been a finalist in the National Student Electroset Student Awards. I'd had a poster design published in the professional level European Illustration Annual, and jobs were plentiful in those days. And I thought I would just breeze into any one of those kind of jobs. But no, I couldn't get a job. So I did remember back to a teacher that one day brought some films in and showed me the very first film by a guy called Richard Williams, who was an amazing animator, and I saw his film and it blew me away. So I did a little bit of research, and we didn't even have internet in those days. Did some research and found that he did the title sequence and inserts for the Charge of the Light Brigade movie, directed by Tony Richardson, and it blew me away. His work was fantastic. So then when I started casting my net further, I looked for animation studios in London. Up to that point, I thought animation was something that was done in Hollywood, but nobody did it in England. And I was totally wrong. There were no courses or anything like that in those days. And lo and behold, I applied to one job, and out of 30 applicants, I got a job. And then a few years later, I remembered the Richard Williams thing, so I applied to Richard Williams, and it took me a year, but after a year, I got into Richard Williams' studio as his personal apprentice. Amazing, okay? And I was there about 5.5 years, and then eventually set up my own studio called Animus Productions, which lasted for 20 years until I moved to the States in 1998. Okay, question 2. Now, what would you describe as your style or approach? Well, I'm a die-hard, old-school, hand-drawn, pencil and paper animation guy. I love it. I still don't believe it's reached anywhere near its full potential, despite all the amazing stuff that's been done before. And yes, I use software. I've used Toon Boom and Moho, and I've even tried 3D animation, but I just don't like it. I don't like the plastic feel you get, and it's even worse with AI. So I've stuck to my guns, and I do, just for joy now, hand-drawn animation, doing things I want to do, maybe not commissioned, but doing what I want to do. And it's always going to be hand-drawn because there is so much more control, and there's so much more emotion and personal commitment to doing 2D drawings. So that's my style. What one piece of advice do you wish you had when you first started out? Well, I wish I'd known about animation. To be honest, I would have made my college studies much more focused around a career in animation. But I got there in the end, and I've had a fantastic life. I've studied with some of the greatest animators that have ever been, the greats from way back in Warner Brothers and Disney history, when I was young, of course, not now, they're long gone. Richard Williams, I was his apprentice for a 1.5 years before being a director animator at his studio for another 5 years. I had all these things, but nobody had prepared me for it. I kind of just stumbled into it. So it's hard to answer that one. I just wish I'd had more exposure to animation at the onset when I was still a student. What excites you about teaching this course? Well, I'm absolutely excited about teaching this course. When I came over to the US, where I am right now, I came over in '98, and I took 2.5 years to get a green card and a work permit to legally be here. And then once I'd got here, I started reaching out for investors and to make my own movies, to set up my own studio, and was making good progress. And then in 2002, Disney closed down their traditional hand-drawn animation studio, and the whole industry died overnight. So I thought, what do I do next? What's plan B? And I didn't have a plan B, but I found out plan B was teaching. So I've been here for 20 years, and I've taught many, many courses, and I've seen changes in the industry come and go. But I'm more excited about teaching now than I've ever been. And I still believe fundamentally that although all of you guys are probably going into a 3D world, a 2D digital world, or even an AI animation world, for those who will get jobs in that world, I still believe that the best training is when you know the principles of movement, but you hand draw them. It's one thing to take software, set keys, have a rigged character, and set keys and get the software to do the in-betweens. But really, that's not how you learn. That's just watching software do stuff. And really, the best animation, the best character animation, is done where you don't obey the rules. You don't do logical in-betweens. You put things on arcs. You do slowing in and slowing out timing. Then you do all other kind of tricks that you can only really express when you're drawing things. And when you're drawing things, even if you struggle with drawing, there's still going to be a better way of learning than just putting keys in software and watching it move, because there's so much to it, and it only really comes out when you follow the principles of the greats that went before me, the Disney and the Warner Brothers and all those great character animators. It's only when you apply those and you get that knowledge, which is why I'm excited about this course, because I really want to share my knowledge about doing walks, because they're the most crucial thing in animation. I think when you have that knowledge, wherever you go in the animation world, that knowledge is going to make you a plus person in that area, because most people are learning digital software, and very few schools or colleges are teaching the traditional principles of movement, especially with walks. So I'm very proud and very excited to do this course, and I think you're really going to benefit from it. Okay, what's a common challenge animators face, and how do you help overcome it? Well, I really just answered that, because I think the big challenge of young animators today is that everyone is so technology and software obsessed that they don't learn the fundamentals of animation movement. And it's the movement that makes the animator. It's not the software, it's not the technology. Technology, even AI technology, is still a more advanced pencil. But whatever technology you use, it only gives out as good as what you put into it. And if you have no knowledge of movement, how can you put in and get the best out of any technology you use? So I think, the big challenge is to think beyond the technology, not let the software dictate to you, but you dictate to it. And you can only do that if you have the right knowledge and understand the core principles of movement. And that's what I want to share with you. Why do you think these skills or techniques are worth learning? Well, again, I've already answered it. If everyone's learning, think about it. Years ago, I was the dean of a school called DigiPen Institute of Technology, and they are really one of the most advanced schools in the US for game design, game animation, game art, etc., etc. And as the dean, I went to a HR convention at Pixar down in California, and I met their HR people, and I said to them, quite honestly, I said, tell me, what is it that most students that are coming to you for jobs, what is it they're missing? What is it they're lacking? And they said two things. They said one thing is nobody has sketchbooks anymore. Nobody does drawings. When we see students, we see thousands of students a year, and every one of them, they've all learned Maya, they've all learned whatever software the college is teaching them. But none of them actually do drawing, and therefore everything looks the same. So we're looking for those applicants that have that something special, and one of those something special things are having a sketchbook by observing life, observing action, observing things, and doing sketches. And that's why I have the observational gesture drawing exercises at the beginning of my classes, so that it hones your eye, brain, hand coordination, to know what to see and know how to interpret it into animation key poses. And without good key poses, you're never going to have good animation anyway. So sketchbook number one. Number two, they told me, they said, if a kid comes into our job, events, and comes up to us and they don't know software, and they draw little stick figures and they animate them, and those animated stick figures move beautifully, we will sign that kid up immediately, because that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for everyone who knows all the same things about software and technology. And anyway, we've got our own technology that we have to train people on anyway to work at Pixar. And so if that kid can make a stick drawing move beautifully, we will hire them because we can train them in technology, no problem. But so many students don't have that gift of making things move beautifully. And that's why animation done hand-drawn, I still insist on that, done hand-drawn, based on the core principles of movement, is going to put you far ahead of the competition, because everyone else knows the same software as you. So what else do you have to offer? So knowledge of core principles of movement and sketchbooks. That's my one advice to you guys. Can you share a moment in your animation journey that made you feel proud? Well, I've had many. I really had many. I got a big kick at the early years of my career when I was working for Richard Williams in his studio, and he was out working in New York directing a movie called Raggedy Ann and Andy. And Blake Edwards, the movie director, came up and was making another Pink Panther movie. And he said, as Dick had done the animated titles for the previous one, he wanted Dick to do it again, but Dick wasn't around to do it again. So Dick asked me to do it. And I had this huge excitement of working with a real-time movie director on a real-time movie, which everyone knows and loved at the time, and to be given complete freedom to do what I want for the title sequence. It was unbelievable. So it was hard work. We had 12 weeks to animate about 2.5 minutes and do the end title sequence as well. But I was given complete control. He said to me, what do you want to do for the titles? And I said, I don't know. What's the film about? And he said, well, here's the script. Come back in a week's time and tell me what you want to do for the titles, because it's really down to you. It's anything you want it to be. Come back in a week's time. So basically I went away and storyboarded some ideas based on film spoofs of the time. Sweet Charity and Sound of Music and King Kong and all kinds of things that were happening back then were popular icons with cinema. And I went back with these ideas, and I sat down with him and went through the storyboard. And I got very nervous actually at one point, because I do a spoof on Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, dancing over the top of the mountain, and I did a gag on that, and I didn't realize until I got there that he was actually married to Julie Andrews. So I thought I may have blown this by doing that. So when I showed him the storyboard of that part, I kind of said, oh, we do a spoof on Sound of Music, and I tried to get on to the next sequence that I was gonna pitch to him. And he said, wait. And he was a very stern man, very serious and kind of scary. And he said, wait, what was that? And I said, oh, that's kind of doing a Julie Andrews spoof, and we're sending up Julie Andrews and everything. And he just glared at it. He just stared at it. And I thought, oh, God, I've really blown this one. And he stared at it and glowered at it and everything. And then after about a minute or so, which felt like an hour, he suddenly laughed out loud. So loud, he was sitting on a low stool at the time. He laughed so big and loud that he fell off the back of the stool he was sitting on when we were going through this. And I thought, okay, it's sold. And basically it was. He said, okay, you got 12 weeks. I love all this. I don't even want to look at it anymore. Go away and do it and bring me something special. And basically I went away and with a couple of people brought it back and showed it to him, and he loved it. And it eventually went on to win, D&AD Silver Award and things like that. But for me, I guess that was one of the moments in my life that was a high point, because the real kick, apart from meeting big people and working on big projects, the real kick for me is that as I was mainly working in advertising, I went to the cinema and actually saw my work on a big screen sitting in a big audience, because the films were so popular in those days, they filled the theaters. And I was sitting in the audience watching my work and hearing everyone around me laughing. And I thought, this is what it's all about. This is a character, iconic character, and I'm making that audience laugh with my work. And that was a very special moment. So I guess that there've been many moments, but that was a special one. What's your next project and what can you tell us about it? Well, I've reached an age where I don't chase commercial work anymore. I like to do what I like to do, and it's basically things that come from my heart, things that I've never been allowed to do in the industry, because it's a money-driven industry, and you work for hire in the industry. So it's very little chance to express yourself. The Pink Panther was probably the most freedom I've ever had in an animated production. So what I do now in my latter years is I write a lot. I write books and things like that and illustrate, but I like to animate the things I want to do. I also want to plan projects that I still want to do. If I'm given the years and the opportunity, I want to make a movie, and I've tried my whole life. I've brought out 2 books, one of which is called Animation Me, which is my memoirs of a journey through animation, and I've had some amazing experiences and got great stories to tell. And that will show you the kind of journey I've had, but I would love to turn that into an animated memoir. And it sounds like an ego trip, and it's not. But the idea of the memoir is to see me, it's almost documentary in style, but with different twists to it. And it's basically me sitting at a desk, drawing my animation and reminiscing on things that had happened. And the scenario takes place in 24 hours of me at the desktop, with a bit of sleep in there, but, and every stage of the day represents a stage of my journey. And then I have my animated muse character, his imaginary character, animated Arnie, who feeds off me and we feed off each other. He's a pest and he's an inspiration at the same time, and we play off. So I want to do a really quirky, unusual animated journey through my life. And the interesting thing is, and I've got so many stories that were never captured on film or by a camera or anything like that. We didn't have cell phones for most of my career, so we couldn't capture things. I want to recreate them in animation, and there's some amazing stories. But what I really want to do is find young people who have dreams of doing animation, and I want to commission them all to animate a story throughout my memoir, animated memoir film. So that is what I'm planning to do. Unfortunately, the tough thing about animation is it's other people's money. If you don't make a lot of money, and in my career, everything I've made, I've put back up on the screen into the work. So I don't have a big nest egg or even a big pension plan or anything. So I need other people's money to make stuff happen. But I don't want big budgets either. This can be done on a very low budget. So that's where I want to go still. The world will decide whether I can do that. But in the meantime, I want to share my legacy with everyone else, my knowledge of movement, the core principles of movement, and anything I can do to encourage the young people of today to become the master animators of tomorrow. Okay, that's all I wish for.